Good morning from Jeff's Little Engine Service. Today we're going to be fixing this Troy-Bilt riding lawnmower. Yeah, don't mind the phone. So it's a Troy-Bilt Bronco, and we're looking at one of these Kohler Courage 18 engines. And the problem is there was gas leaking out from this area, which is the air filter and carburetor area. And the gentleman also made the comment that he had gas in his oil. Well, he thought his oil level was just really high, but turns out there was gas in the oil. That's another sign that things inside the carburetor are failing. If the carburetor float or the float valve isn't cooperating or working properly, some of these engines, you can get gas that floods out of the carburetor into the engine motor oil compartment, the sump area, and that's not good. So we want to make sure that this carburetor is nice and rebuilt and functioning correctly and not flooding out. Let's get started. So easy enough to remove the air filter. I already have it loose. Comes out. So here we are with the air filter and cover removed. You can see the carburetor right there. We have these two bolts here, which are 10mm, I believe, and then we have this bolt on top there, which I believe is maybe an 8mm. So we'll take those off, and this whole plate will come off. Anytime you're working on the fuel system or the carburetor, you want to make sure everything's nice and clean. I'll probably end up replacing that fuel filter, but I just wanted to take a peek inside the tank and see if we have any stuff in there. And that's a good sign. I don't know if you can see it, but the gas tank is empty. So we're going to leave this cap off and let this tank air dry. And then we're going to blow compressed air down in there, and all the dried up bits and sediment and crud are just going to come flying out. Hey, buddy. That was a customer of mine. Sorry about that. So anyways, yeah. But here we go. We have an empty tank. Where'd all the gas go? I hope it's not in the lower end here. And you can't really tell. I sniffed it. Doesn't smell like gas. I'm gonna have to get my tripod out. Too much sun, bad lighting, and hopefully you can see that it's within normal range. That's a good sign. Alrighty, I have my 10mm and my 8mm. 8mm for the top one here. It's kind of a funky shaped little bolt. Go to my 10mm. Those were kind of loose. At least that one was. That one was kind of loose too. Okay, so this backing plate pulls right off at this point, hopefully. Want to make sure you disconnect your breather hose. You can just pull it right out like that. And there it is. You have a gasket here, so be careful not to lose that. And now would be a good time to clamp off the fuel line up here so I can replace the fuel filter and to stop flow to the carburetor. That is the hose clamp that I use. Okay, so now back to this carburetor, and now's a good time to take off the fuel line. Find out where the clamp's at here. I think I can get to the clamp now. These clamps are a pain in the butt sometimes. Alright, and it's a good idea to kind of twist it. There we go. Alright, now this is kind of a tricky part. I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. So to take this carburetor off, you want to pull it out. Actually, we need to disconnect the power to the fuel solenoid down here first. And that could be kind of difficult too, but they just pull apart. We have to get some pliers. So this is just a push-on connection here, but it gets stiff. There we go. And I might have to take off this fuel solenoid because this bar may be in the way here to take off the carburetor. Let's see. There's also a connection right here, the ground, which is attached to the carburetor as well, so I need to take that off. That's an 8mm as well. Carburetor will not come off unless you take this off. That's for sure. Yeah, so as you can see, I can't pull the carburetor out far enough to get it out because of the fuel solenoid on here. So, to get that fuel solenoid off, what I've had to do is take a 1/2-inch wrench and I've ground it down a little bit so it's very narrow on the end. It's a very narrow wrench. So now you should be able to fit this up in there. Yep. Take off this solenoid. We're going to have some gas leak out. Be sure to have a rag under there. And this is how you remove the float bowl as well. See this little component? It has the little plunger right here. That has to be functioning properly. I'll show you how to test that. Yeah, so now we should be able to pull the carburetor all the way out, and let's see, I think we're going to rotate it. We're going to end up rotating it clockwise. So here we go. And you have both of these linkages to take off at the same time, as well as the spring. It's probably a good idea to take that spring off first. Hope y'all can see what I'm doing here. Having a real hard time with my lighting today. Alright, so I've removed the spring. And just pull down. Let's see. Wonder if... There we go. There's one. Got one off. There's two. Perfect. Now we can rebuild this carburetor. Alright, so let's talk about this carburetor a little bit. The fuel solenoid here, its function is when you turn the key off, this little plunger plunges upwards, and it seals off the nozzle and prevents any fuel from getting sucked up into the nozzle and creating a backfire. Not a real absolutely essential piece of equipment, but it does prevent backfiring. Now that we have the fuel solenoid off, we should be able to take off the float bowl. Sometimes they're on there kind of stiff. And keep in mind, take a look inside and see what we have. First thing I notice is that the gasket, the float bowl O-ring, is ruined, so we'll have to replace that. Another thing I notice is that inside the carburetor there is some contaminants, so that's not a good thing either. To get the float off, you just simply need to pull this pin. Sometimes they get stuck in there. Let me go grab a pair of pliers. There we go. Just work it out. Twist it, twist it, twist it, and it'll come out. Now you'll want to clean this pin and file off, sand it smooth where if you damaged it like I did there before you put it back on. So now you can take the float off. And what's attached to the float is the float valve. And I don't know if you can see that. I can see it. That float valve is whacked. See how it's... Yeah, see how this thing is... It's not symmetrical. It's whacked. Need to get a new one. That was the main problem with this, because as you can see, the rest of the carburetor is fairly clean. We do have some surface stuff here, but this stuff just wipes right off usually with a, or you can brush it off with a toothbrush. So since the carburetor is fairly clean, I don't suspect that all the other little tiny ports and passageways are plugged up. I could remove the pilot jet here. It's got the safety lock device on there. I could remove that and clean out in there as well, but because this motor was running and I've obviously found the problem, I'm just going to clean it and reassemble it, and I bet you it's going to work just fine. We'll find out. So I'm going to order a new one of these, and I'll get back to you as soon as I get it in. So I have a little bit of carburetor cleaner I'm going to spray on there, and just start brushing, trying to get rid of some of that brown powdery stuff that's on there. So I'll get back to you as soon as I'm done cleaning this carburetor up. How's that sound? Things are looking pretty good. There's some passages like that tiny little brass hole. You'll want to make sure that's clean or clear, and just get as much gunk out of it as you can. I use Q-tips sometimes, little pieces of wire, whatever it takes to clean it out. So this rebuild won't be too difficult because this carburetor is fairly clean already. We just need to replace that float valve. So I mentioned I wasn't going to take off this and do that sort of a thorough cleaning, but one thing you can do to make sure that some of the passageways are clear is, I don't know if you can see it, but there's some darn near microscopic holes. See those holes? They're microscopic, but you'll want to make sure they're clear, and I just use some thin little wire and get down in there and poke through to make sure they're clear. So don't forget that step. Alright, I'm back everyone, and this is the part number for the repair kit from Kohler, and I've already taken the two parts out of it that I need, which is the float bowl gasket and the float needle valve. They give you a couple different float needle valves and all the gaskets necessary to replace all the gaskets if you feel the need to do that. But we're just going to use these two parts because this is a quick fix video. Alright. Go ahead and put the O-ring on. Hopefully it fits. Love it when a plan comes together. Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned the float was in good shape. No signs of damage to it. No, when you shake it and listen to it, you don't hear any gas inside, so you're good. So let's go ahead and put this little baby in place. I have this carburetor as clean as I can get it. Like that. And float pin goes into place. So there we go. The float is in place. The hinge pin is in place. The new needle valve is in place. The float bowl is nice and clean. It can go back on. So now you have the fuel solenoid. You want to make sure the gasket is still on here. Some of them are metal. You also want to clean out down in there by spraying stuff and wiggling it back and forth, and then a little bit of compressed air. I recommend blowing some air in there to get the rest of it out. Now, you don't want to tighten this. I mean, you want to make it tight, but not like gorilla tight. You're going to strip something. So it looks like this stuff can go back on. Yeah, so I've got this one. It goes in there, and I'm going to go ahead and attach the spring first. Got the spring in place, and the idea is to put these both on at the same time, but I think putting the throttle on first is the best idea, and then working the choke linkage into it. Now be careful, because if you mess around too much, you're going to break these plastic components on here, so don't be a gorilla when working on it. Alright, things are going back into place. All the gaskets. Oh dang, I forgot. I gotta take that stinking thing off, don't I? Rat farts. Alright. Once again, you have to take off this component to get the carburetor into place. Okay, there's some wires back behind here. I don't know if you could see that. I just want to make sure that they're not pinched. They're supposed to be outside of this plastic cover, it looks like. So, make sure they stay that way. Okay. Make sure not to go too tight. About like that. Pretty snug. And then this plate has to go up, way up here, for this ground bolt. Once again, remember not to pinch these wires, because they're trying to get stuck behind this plastic piece. Now is probably a good time to tighten this down. Once again, don't be a gorilla and over tighten everything, because it'll break. Make sure the linkages are working. Alright, now it's time to change this fuel filter. Easy enough to do. Hardest part's usually getting the hose off of it. If you do a twisting motion, that usually helps. Sometimes I use a long pair of pliers like this to pry it off. Alright. Boom! New fuel filter. I'm just going to let a little bit of gas out of here just to clear out that line. And I think it's okay to reattach. Take off the clamp. We'll see if the carburetor holds gas. Hopefully it will. Clamps are in place. So if you look down in the tank now, you can see that everything is dry. But you can also see, I don't know if you can, if I'm at the right angle, but there's some crud in there. Anyways, so what I do, it's sat out here long enough in the sun to dry out, and there's still some stuff left in there, so I just blow some air in here. I don't know if you saw that, but whatever was left in there came flying out. So that's about as clean as we're going to get that tank, unless we take it off and go through a whole bunch more work. But you know, I don't see any more sediment down in there, so I think we're cool, man. We're going to be fueling this baby up shortly and testing it out. Don't want to forget to connect the solenoid wire. I don't know if you can see this, but the solenoid wire had an extra wire hanging off of it. The wire that goes to the solenoid had an extra wire hanging off of it. You reconnect the solenoid. Nice and tight. So we have our carburetor backing plate. That'll go back into place. This just pokes in. And make sure everything is in place. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. Hopefully we'll put some gas in this thing and it won't leak anymore, and it'll run good. That's the plan. So I want to tighten up these first, kind of evenly on each side, and you don't want to go too tight here once again, but nice and snug. About like that. Now I was going to show you how to diagnose that solenoid, and basically all you do is you just connect the wire and you turn on the key to the first position, and you should hear that solenoid click. The position before you start the engine, just the the accessory position. Now listen, you hear that? Hear that? That's that solenoid turning on when you turn the key to the on position. So that's a good way to test that solenoid, just like that. I don't see any fuel leaking anymore. It's ready to test this thing out. Wish me luck.